Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I am Matt Connerton, and Gary Hopper has vanished, literally. He's like invisible. Actually, he's not here at all. Do you know where Gary is?
Yes, he's at the State House.
Oh, that's right. Yes, he's at the State House. Hopefully, he'll be here soon. So I am Matt Connerton, and with this empty chair, and of course, we have a returning guest. Darlene Pawlik is here. How are you, Darlene?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good. When did you join us? It's been over a year, right?
Yeah,
it's been a while. Yeah. So welcome back.
Thank you so much. Nice to see you.
So hopefully Gary will be here soon, but we can we'll muddle through without him just fine. I think I've had to do the show without Gary before, quite a few times actually.
I'm sure.
But it's so funny because according to his Facebook post, I guess there's something going on with the leadership. Mm-hmm. For the House Republicans, and a couple of years ago, it was a similar situation where everyone was stuck there late for the same thing.
Right.
When it was Bill O'Brien versus Sean Jasper, so a little bit of history repeating.
Mm-hmm.
But Darlene, I guess, well, tell us why you're here to start with, and of course, for people who are not familiar with you, you have a really compelling story. You have been through a lot, to say the very least.
Yeah. I like the way that Gary wrote on Facebook today that I am proof that God still loves us.
Mm-hmm.
That was really cool.
Well, why? Well, let's start with why you're here today, what you're here to talk about, and then we can...
Gary invited me to say hi to everybody, and so I thought we'd talk about life, ages and stages, ebb and flow, growing and slowing, and all of that.
Sure. Okay. Did you prepare that ahead of time? It kind of sounds like you're writing a rap there.
Oh,
like,
no.
Like if we had a beat, you could... No. Anyway. So life is good?
Life is good, yeah.
Good. Okay. What have you been up to? I mean, obviously you're active in the pro-life movement. What have you been up to since we saw you last?
Actually, I haven't been that active in the pro-life movement.
Okay.
I got sick 2 years ago, came down with a really good case of Lyme disease, and so I was bed to chair for about 20 months.
Oh, my God.
Yeah,
really?
Yeah. I still managed to get out and do some speaking, which is kind of amazing because I had commitments.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not dead, I'm going. So I did.
Does that still affect you today?
Yes.
Because from what I've read, it kind of, there's technically no cure for it, right?
Technically,
you can only
no
manage
cure,
it?
Yeah.
Do you have days where it affects you?
Oh, absolutely.
Really badly?
Yes,
yeah.
really bad sometimes, yeah.
What happened? Were you out in the woods? Was it a deer tick or?
Actually, it was probably just undiagnosed. I've been sick off and on for the last 30 or so years. I was always told I had chronic fatigue syndrome.
Yeah.
Or, my first doctors, when I really got sick at first, it's all in your head. You're stressed. And I'm like, you'd be stressed too if you couldn't work. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So you may have had Lyme disease for 30 years and not known it.
Yeah.
That's stunning. Wow.
I've always lived in a clearing in the woods here in New Hampshire or Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So my whole family's always had interaction with ticks, and so it's not surprising.
But what led to the diagnosis? What was the fatigue getting worse?
The fatigue and the migraines.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So instead of having a migraine once or twice a month, it was 2 or 3 times a week, and I was, missing work and not able to move, and without, hate to say it, but throwing up.
Yeah.
Whenever I moved, it was really bad.
So when you went to the doctor, did they have to run a battery of tests to narrow it down, or did the doctor kind of figure this might be Lyme disease?
I really would not go to the doctor because I had been turned away so many times with, it's all in your head kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So we went to an herb store looking for some kind of pain relief because I had been taking handfuls of pain relievers, Tylenol, aspirin, naproxen, Advil, whatever I could get into my stomach, but it started to really hurt my stomach, and I was choosing between joint pain and stomach pain, and after a while I was doubled over, and so I was like, well, I got to try something different. And when we got there, I'll never forget it because the lights that are this bright were very overwhelming. It was just sunshine coming through the windows, and I felt like it was stabbing my eyeballs like meatballs,
Yeah.
And the woman there said, "Oh, I think you have Lyme disease." And
no kidding.
Yeah.
So she knew.
She said, "What's going on? This, that, and the other thing." And I wasn't even able to really answer any questions. I was so sick.
Yeah.
And he answered her questions, and she said, "Yeah, I think you have not Lyme disease." And so
Wow.
I found a local Lyme disease doctor and went in, and he's like, "Pretty sure you have Lyme disease." but he did do the test.
Yeah.
They have to send it out to California, to IGeneX.
Okay.
Because the test that most doctors do for Lyme disease is very often wrong.
No kidding.
They say anywhere from 40 to 60% wrong.
Oh, wow.
So the Western blot isn't necessarily going to tell you whether or not you have Lyme disease.
Right.
Yeah.
From what I've read and heard, I get the impression that it's much more common than most people realize.
Yes, I've heard that too. There are some people who actually think that pretty much everybody has it.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of what stressors are going to bring it to the surface and activate it in our lives.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, it makes sense because, you know, I'm probably about the least outdoorsy person you'll ever meet. So you wouldn't see me in the woods now. But, you know, when we're kids, I mean, everyone plays in the woods and probably comes into contact with who knows what. And, you know, it's not probably not unreasonable to assume most of us have at some point, at least in our childhood, come into contact with a deer tick or something.
Yeah, especially in this area.
Are there other do you know? Are there other things that carry Lyme disease?
They are saying that they are finding the same Borrelia, I'm probably not saying that right, bacteria in mosquitoes and fleas.
Oh, no kidding. Great.
Yeah, so it's now being called a vector-borne instead of just tick-borne disease.
Yeah. So do you have to take medication for it now, or do you
I was on antibiotics, various kinds of antibiotics, various stages of antibiotics, anti-malarial drugs, anti-fungal drugs, like everything, for about 22 months. I was on IV antibiotics for 5.5 months.
Wow.
Which the insurance company doesn't pay for, by the way.
Oh, great.
Now, they pay for 4 weeks, and that's their standard, and that's it.
No
And
kidding.
I called them up. My husband has good insurance, so I called them up and I got somebody to say, yes, we're going to pay for that, just get a reauthorization. So I said, great, I'm cool. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the company that was supplying the medication and said, this bill's not being paid, you need to pay it. It was $2,300.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my goodness. So I did approach the insurance company and said, they told me verbally that they were going to take care of this. And 7 or 8 weeks later, I did get a reimbursement check for most of that money.
Oh,
so,
good.
Yes, I was like, that's so great. Because they did tell me I wouldn't have continued with that company otherwise.
Yeah. Insurance companies can be horrible to deal with. Just
But there
awful.
are companies that'll do the IV antibiotics. For those of you who might have Lyme disease, there are companies that do the IV antibiotics for way less money than that.
Yeah.
It ended up being about $580 for the actual medicine a month.
Wow.
Yeah, just for the medicine. Then
Jeez.
there's the supplies, and you have to have a nurse come and change the PICC line.
Yeah.
Even though I'm a nurse, it's not something you can do with one hand.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. Wow, that's incredible. Well, I'm glad you're feeling better.
Well, thank you. I am too.
Are the migraines back to the level that they were before, where you're just having a couple of months?
No. I've not had the severity of migraine since my daughter's birthday. I had some birthday cake.
Yeah.
And that was in July. So I've not had a migraine since July.
Do you think the birthday cake set off the migraine?
Oh, I do. Yeah.
Really?
I've been on a very strict no. I do cheats on some grains, but no wheat in particular, and just mild grains like rice and oatmeal.
Yeah.
And I had birthday cake, so I had sugar, which I don't eat sugar either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're susceptible to migraines, is sugar typically? Do you know if sugar is typically a trigger for that, or maybe just in your case because you don't usually have sugar in your body, you didn't know what to do with it, and it said, hey, let's have a migraine.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah. My dad doesn't eat any sugar, and he's, I would imagine if he put some sugar in his body, he'd probably react pretty poorly to it too, just because I know that, just generally if you're used to eating really healthy, any kind of junk food can cause problems. But I get a lot of headaches, but I've never had a migraine. Is it true that it's different from a regular headache in terms of, like I've read that it starts kind of at the...
It's a choking
base of the
feeling
neck?
for me. I think
Really?
migraines differ for different people, but
Yeah.
for me it's very choking, and just moving, just like that much on, not all the time, but just that much on occasion would. I had a bucket beside my bed
Yeah.
for about 6 months, and May of 2015, I think.
Yeah.
I got to throw that bucket away.
Good.
I was really glad for that.
Yeah, good
That's
for you. Good. Well, prior to all of that, I mean, you were pretty politically active.
Very
and,
politically active, yep. Testifying before the legislature quite often on pro-life bills. And even in 2015, even though I was sick, I did some work with the Political Action Committee for New Hampshire Right to Life. And I did some speaking for Save the One, which is a nationwide organization of people who have been either conceived in rape, mothers from rape, or incest, or have poor fetal diagnosis, poor in utero diagnosis. So those are called the exceptions. You know, usually
Yeah.
if there's pro-life legislation. So we did some lobbying down in D.C. and just did a bunch of speaking around the country.
Yeah. Now, do you do any of that now, or have you stepped away from that entirely?
I went on sabbatical from January to October 1st of this year, except that I did a pro-life women's conference in Dallas.
Oh, okay.
With Abby Johnson. So anybody who knows pro-life knows Abby Johnson, and that was an interesting time. It was very emotional because Abby was a former clinic director for 8 years, and so she had a lot of people around her that were from the industry that came to the conference.
Yeah.
And had a lot to say.
Yeah.
A real lot to say.
When you say a clinic, like what kind of clinic? Like a woman's health
Oh,
clinic?
yeah, no, an abortion clinic. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Planned Parenthood, actually.
I think the last time you were on, you might have mentioned her. Because this sounds familiar now.
Yeah,
someone who had
she had
worked
probably just written her book the last time I was on. She
Okay.
wrote a book called Unplanned,
there.
which was from her experience in the abortion clinic. It was a Planned Parenthood clinic. And she has recently written a book, if I can remember the title correctly, The Walls Are Talking. I think it's The Walls Are Talking. I can see the book cover,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure I'm saying it right.
Yeah.
And it's herself and other former abortion workers wrote the book together, and all of their experiences are in there. I
Yeah.
haven't actually read it.
Oh, okay. Do you want to talk about? I mean, it's a compelling story. Obviously, your history, what happened to you when you were a kid and whatnot.
Sure.
Should we get
sure,
into all
it's part
that?
of life,
Because-
right? Ages and stages.
I mean, I know we've talked about it on the show before, obviously, but I'm sure a lot of people are. I like to think we've picked up new viewers along the way, so there's probably a lot of people who aren't familiar with your story and what happened to you. And
Yeah, okay. Well, I was conceived during rape. So my mom was 15 years old, and she was raped, and he told her that he'd ruined her, and no one would ever want her now. And so he basically said, well, you should marry me then, because nobody else is going to want you. And so she did. And after 2 brutal years, she was pregnant again. She called her mom, saying that she would commit suicide if she didn't get rescued. If she didn't,
Wow.
if my grandmother didn't take her out of there, she was going to commit suicide.
yeah,
And so she went to live with my grandmother, and she had her second baby, and of course she had a lot of issues, and she took care of us out of a sense of duty. There wasn't a lot of the whole nurturing kind of thing.
Oh, really?
I mean, there was some, but it was tough for her.
yeah.
And she just didn't think that would happen to children. In other words, he wouldn't abuse children the same way he had abused her. So we were sent to our paternal grandmother's house, and there she used to dress us up in little outfits and present us to him as if we were gifts. They were clothing that wasn't ours. I
weird.
remember one particular time I was just a toddler, and I had this little tiny frilly dress on. It was early spring, and the little frilly panties that they used to put on kids, I don't think they do that anymore.
Yeah.
The little lacy stockings and patent leather shoes, and none of those clothes were my clothes.
Yeah.
Those were things that she had taken out of a closet in her room, and she dressed me all up, and then she presented me to him as if I was some kind of a prize,
Weird.
It was really very, very weird, very
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah.
It was a lot of unspeakable things went on
Wow.
during those days. And another time, he had kept us outside in the barn because it was where he did his things, and I was dirty from whatever he was doing, and she had given me a bath, and my mother came, and she said, don't say a word, in my ear as my mother approached.
Yeah.
And I didn't talk for 2 days. I didn't say one word for 2 whole days. I didn't say anything at all.
Yeah.
And so my mom just didn't know.
Yeah.
She just really didn't know that that was going on.
Do you think she didn't know, or was she sort of willfully ignorant to it?
I really do believe her. She says she didn't know. She
Okay.
says she couldn't imagine that happening to small children.
Yeah.
And by the time we were older, old enough to stay away from him, she did know that there was something that could go on, and she didn't want anything to do with that.
Yeah.
She said there were clues along the way that she should have seen, but she just couldn't imagine it.
Yeah.
So by the time I was 13, I was a target of human trafficking. This very handsome man came to my neighborhood, pretended to be looking for a friend of his, and just hung out and talked to all of us kids in the neighborhood.
Where were you living at this point?
At that point, I was in
geographically?
Haverhill, Massachusetts, so
Haverhill,
right over
okay.
the line.
Okay.
Yeah. And it wasn't long before, the weather turned and it was cold, like it is now.
Yeah.
So it wasn't long before I was in his car, and then it wasn't long before I was in his bed. And he always made it sound like I could have anything I wanted. I was very poor. I mean, we didn't even have proper clothing at that point. She had
Yeah.
been through her second divorce, and she was struggling to just work a job. And I wasn't getting along with my mom really at all. We were fighting all the time. And
Yeah.
he gave me his phone number, but he never took mine. So he didn't impose at all. He sort of stayed like very friendly, and that's very typical actually of a pimp, which now I know.
Yeah. They kind of gain your trust, and yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that then, obviously.
Yeah.
So I was first sold to a small businessman from Atkinson, New Hampshire, when I was 14 years old, on my 14th birthday.
Yeah.
My mom came home from running some errands, and I said, well, it's my birthday, and I expected some kind of a birthday present, and she threw 2 crumpled up dollars on the table, and I was mortified. I was just devastated.
Yeah.
I was probably filled with an entitlement mentality at that point, because there was no way I deserved anything. We had been fighting all the time. I was not a good kid. I mean, I threw a rock at my neighbor's window because I was angry with them. I mean, I was not a good kid.
Right. Right.
But the reason I wasn't a good kid was because I was acting out because of all the abuse.
Yeah.
So,
Makes sense.
yeah. So now
Yeah.
when I speak about sex trafficking and the risks and stuff, I tell people, when you've got a kid that is really acting out, you've got to dig and find out why they're really
Right.
acting out, because
Right.
it could be that they're feeling used and abused, and that's just the MO from then on.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was sold off and on to, I couldn't even tell you how many men from with him as my pimp, and then I was passed to another pimp. And
At this point in your childhood, how cognizant were you of what exactly? I mean, did you fully understand what was happening? That you were literally being sold? And
yeah,
Wow.
I knew it, but I felt like it was just a book that was written for me, floating downstream. This is my life.
Yeah.
I'm here to be used and abused. I felt worth less than other people. I didn't feel worthy of protection or anything because I had not had that.
yeah.
Before I was 18, so this is long before I was 18, I didn't believe that there were people in the world who would actually do something for another person without some kind of necessity. In other words, it wasn't their duty to do so,
Right.
or they were going to get something in return.
Right.
I just didn't know those people existed.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
but when I was 17, in the early fall, I was sold to one man as a house pet. And so I sort of relaxed a little bit. I got a job at a pizza store.
Yeah.
I was in an apartment. The apartment was rented in the name of the sheriff in the community. So he had underworld ties to illegal gambling, and he
Oh.
had ties to this sheriff, and he had taken me
Wow.
previously to a detective's home in Lawrence. And so I knew that he was well connected in all of these ways.
Yeah.
So even though I knew it was dangerous, it was kind of like being on the right side of the gun.
Right. Yeah. No, it makes sense. Yeah. What about were people around you like you had a job at that point? So were people at work? Did they?
They knew nothing.
They knew nothing.
They knew
Okay.
nothing.
Yeah.
No.
Would you kind of? Did you kind of invent an alternate reality to share with them if they asked you questions about how was your day off? Or
I really
whatever,
didn't
or-
work there very long, and we didn't have. I don't recall.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really don't recall.
Yeah.
I was a perpetual liar, though. I mean, I made up stories for everything.
Sure,
Just
sure.
because how else do you live?
Right.
There was one time when I did tell a nurse when I was hospitalized, because I was in and out of foster care. I was arrested for prostitution as a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid.
Yeah.
hopefully they don't do that now. In some states they still do, but mostly
Yeah.
these are considered trafficking victims, and they're ushered into programs and not jail. But I
Good.
was in lockup and in foster care at different times. Anyway, I was hospitalized one time, and I had told this nurse that I was selling myself for a sandwich, like whatever, just to survive.
Yeah.
And she didn't do anything with that information. At that time, I think she didn't have anything to do with it. There were no resources. Trafficking wasn't a word.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was such thing as white slavery in those days, and they understood a little bit of that. They called it white slavery, but the idea of human sex trafficking wasn't a term. It was an idea. It was still out there. People knew about it, but it wasn't a term.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even until 2000 that there was a federal law depicting exactly what it was by force.
Oh, okay.
By force, fraud, or coercion, so that's women over 18, or if they're under 18 years old.
Okay.
So if they're being sold for sex, under 18, it's automatically trafficking. If it's over 18, it's by force, fraud, or coercion.
Okay.
So they're not prostitutes at that point. And so she was one person that I told the whole truth to. There were a couple of other people, but...
What was her I mean, obviously, you said she didn't do anything, but, I mean, did she at least listen, or...?
She did, and
Yeah.
she looked surprised, and she looked like she might do something with that information, but as I said, I'm not sure there was anything to do with it.
Yeah.
I had been picked up by the FBI on a warrant for somebody else. They were looking for another person, and so they picked me up for questioning, and I was trying to help them find this person, supposedly.
Yeah.
And they didn't do anything about it.
Wow.
Like and I actually, this is funny. It's not funny. It's ironic.
Yeah.
I was with my buyer at a restaurant in Boston, and the FBI agent that had picked me up 6 or so months before was sitting at the bar across from us.
Really?
And he didn't approach us like that. I just don't think there was any way for him to do anything about it, like
Yeah.
there is now. As I said, it wasn't until the year 2000
Yeah.
that the federal law exactly determining what sex trafficking is
Yeah.
was there. There wasn't anything in place during those days, so it was a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting you say that, too, because I seem to recall, and it must have been around that time, that sex trafficking became a big story in the media, and it was kind of like, I remember at least my perception was, I started seeing these documentaries and so forth where they're kind of presenting it as, this is something that's been going on for a really long time, but we're just now, everyone's kind of waking up to it. And so it was probably around that time when it became sort of part of the public consciousness, and of course that leads to legislation about it and whatnot. But yeah, so what year would that have been then? Like when you
In
were
1984 was when I was sold as a house pet to this one buyer.
Okay.
And he told me if I ever got pregnant, I had to have an abortion. And I was like, I've been, passed around for 5 years now. At this point, I'm not going to get pregnant. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
But I did. A couple months after I moved there, it was just before my 18th birthday, I found out I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And he said, I want no life. And he slammed his fist down on, those old couches that had the wooden handles with the cushy seats?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it was that. He slammed his fist down really hard. And he said, I want no life. And I was like, ugh, it shot right through me. And I knew that I was against the wall in no uncertain terms.
Yeah.
And so I had to make the appointment in his presence. He said, you are going to make this appointment. So I did. And somehow I fell asleep that night. I cried myself to sleep. And I had a dream of the abortion procedure in living color.
Wow.
So I saw a little face, a little rib cage, a little hand, all red. And
Yeah.
to this day, it turns my stomach. But the most supernatural part of it is that I had no education from 6th grade. So it wasn't that I knew what it should be. To me, it was a supernatural dream.
Yeah.
Because there's just no way on earth I had the education to know the development of the baby at that point. Like, there's just no way. And I woke up that morning And I threw my hands up in the air and I said, God, if you're real, I need you to show up. I need you to show up.
Yeah.
And I remembered the name of a social worker that had been my key tracker when I was a runaway.
What's that, a key tracker?
She was called a key tracker. So her job as a social worker was to keep track of runaways. That was
Okay.
her whole job, was to keep track of runaways. And
Okay.
So that her title was a key tracker. She was the key person in the runaway situation.
Gotcha. Okay.
So whether I was home or I was a runaway, she was the person that was supposed to try to keep track of me.
Yeah.
She was supposed to try to get intel to find out where I might go,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I called Department of Human Services, and she didn't work there anymore. And so I just told them, I really need to talk to her if you can possibly get in touch with her. And here's my phone number. I had a phone because I was in an apartment.
Yeah.
And she called me within 2 hours or something.
That must have been scary, though, because what if she calls while he's around? That must have been
Yeah, but I
nerve-wracking.
was,
you took a gamble there.
my whole life had been a gamble.
Right, that's
Everything
true.
was a risk. I mean, I thumbed all over across the country.
Yeah.
I mean, my life had no value for myself. And when I realized I was pregnant, it wasn't me that I was looking out for anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
So for me, I was more afraid to go to the abortionist table than I was to stand before him and let him do whatever he was going to do.
That makes sense, yeah.
For
Yeah.
me, I mean, I know that other women have been coerced into this, and that's
Oh, no doubt, yeah.
they've done it. But I was much more willing to die. I had attempted suicide numerous times. As I said,
Oh,
my
really?
body, my life wasn't worth anything, even to me.
Wow.
But she found a home for unwed mothers for me in Hull. It really wasn't a home. It was a person's house who had a couple of rooms in the basement.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes,
Huh.
she had, at that point, this is funny too, because at that point she hadn't even really kept a lot of documentation. She just opened her home to a couple of girls, and when I talked to her, she said she'd accept me.
Mm-hmm.
So I made plans and I put my stuff in storage, and I was supposed to go out to dinner with my buyer that evening after the procedure had been done. So I did. I went back to the apartment. We arranged for my stuff to go into storage the following day.
Yeah.
And then I went back to the apartment, and I was shaking. I was,
Yeah.
crying. I was very upset. I thought he'd check. I thought he was going to find out. Like, I was
Yeah.
to the point of scared for my life because I thought he was going to find out.
Yeah.
And all the way down to Boston, I told him, I have a cousin who's going to give me a job, and she's going to give me a job in a little diner up north, and I made up this long, elaborate story, and
Yeah.
all the way down, he didn't say anything. Like,
Really?
he barely said a word
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
And so we went to dinner in this little Chinese restaurant that we had gone to, I don't know how many times before, and I moved my food around on my plate, and I cried, and I moved around a lot, and I shifted, and I took the painkillers that he gave me. He had these big red painkillers at the
Yeah.
time. That was in the 80s. It was the thing.
You're right.
Now we have little white pills, oxycodone, and
Yeah.
well, I don't know what the street name for them is, but they were reds at that time. And I went to the bathroom frequently, and I cried a lot, etc.
He had to have suspected something was up, right?
Well, I told him, I can't do this anymore. On that table, all of the emotion from the dream, I was
Yeah.
able to relay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I said, when I was on that table, I just couldn't, and the cold and the sounds and everything, and I made up the story that I had gone through with it.
Yeah.
And he believed me.
Oh, okay.
So he
Gotcha.
believed me.
Yeah, yeah.
And on the way home,
Huh.
well, he believed me because he had forced other girls to do this.
Okay.
So he had the experience of, once I make them have an abortion, they don't want to be with me anymore.
Interesting.
Right?
Okay.
So
yeah.
he did already have that experience, and I knew about that experience,
Yeah.
which is probably what gave me the ability to say, yes, I'm not going to just run away, because I didn't think I could run away.
Right.
He was connected with police. He was connected with the underworld.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't think I had any place to go. Now I know that I probably could have run away easy. It wasn't like now where you've got the internet and you can skip trace anybody now.
Mm-hmm.
But then probably would have been hard for him to find me if
Sure.
I really ran away.
Sure.
you know.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that. I really thought that he was so connected. There was no way I was going to run away. I had to make him think that I had had an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And so he did believe me. And on the way home, he said, that's fine. But if you come back to this city, you're mine. In other words, you can't go with another pimp. You have to be mine. And I went down to this woman's house in Hull, and I stayed there for a while. Not my whole pregnancy. I did come back and live with my grandmother during the last part of my pregnancy.
Yeah.
But I had my beautiful girl, and she was perfect. I told God, if she's all right, and she's not messed up from all those reds I had been taking and all the drugs that I had done and everything, then I will serve you, and I'll bring all my children up in the fear and admonition of the Lord. And I did. I really did. I really did my very best to do that. Now, you have to know I had plenty of issues. I had, rages, and I had flying off the handle stuff, and I had, all kinds of tumultuous emotions that I had to deal with, especially when they were young.
Oh, yeah.
But I focused a lot of attention, dissociating from my own stuff, on doing the very best to take care of her and then my subsequent children.
Yeah.
So I deferred a lot of my own healing for a long time.
Yeah.
Until my early to mid 30s, really. I did a little bit earlier, enough to be able to cope with being a mom.
Yeah.
But I still didn't even do that very well, And that's why I say, like, when we talk about life, we talk about ages and stages. Like, we start out as one cell, and then we grow, and we change, and we ebb, and we flow, and we have intersections and crossroads at everywhere we are. And, I call them hinge moments, where if you make a decision, it's a hinge that opens a door, or closes a door, for that matter. And so we all have that, and we all have something that we're dealing with right this minute. And then something else happens, and we're going to deal with something completely different.
Yeah.
But in all of that, I have the most wonderful, and they're all grown now. My baby's 20 years
how
old.
Many kids do you have?
I have 5.
5? Wow.
I have 5, and my baby is 20. I have 2 grandchildren now.
Wow.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah, life is different now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you kind of made your escape, or I guess because he
let me go.
Let you go. Was there any worry after that he might find you or find out the truth, or
yes,
what?
Actually,
Really?
I went to school in Haverhill for my nursing certificate for my LPN. And I actually saw one of my previous buyers there.
Wow.
He was a professor there at the school.
Really?
Oh, yeah. My
wow.
buyers were city councilmen, police, small businessmen of all kinds. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And I've been doing more speaking on the trafficking end and how it correlates with the pro-life issues this past year, because I'm not at Right to Life anymore. So I just did an interview, must be maybe 10 days ago. I think it was on Monday last. And one of the things that she told me, she's a professor down in South Carolina. She said that they did a survey of the buyers across the country in various states and found that it's affluent white men.
Yeah.
And after I got off the interview with her, I went back in my memory banks and I said, pretty much.
No kidding.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What else about this would maybe surprise us? Are there other statistics or information about this sex trafficking trade that people don't know or get wrong?
I think the amount of juveniles that are trafficked would be surprising to people.
Really?
Because boys and girls are trafficked, and they often go to school. Or maybe they're frequent flyers, but they're back in the schools. I went to school for a couple of months.
Yeah.
In the 6th grade, and then I was back home for almost 2 months in the 7th grade. So I went to school for a little while in 7th grade.
Yeah.
I mean, not enough to say I went to 7th grade,
right.
But I was there for a little while. So I think you'd be surprised that kids actually go back into the home situation. I mean, Teresa Reyes, I think her name is, does a lot of speaking on trafficking. I might have her name wrong, but she talks about the fact that she went to youth group and she went to school and she lived in a really nice home with a good family.
Yeah.
But she was pressured into being trafficked, blackmailed basically, and they said they were going to hurt her and hurt her family.
Wow.
So she did it. She snuck out at night and she, did the do and went back to school during the day.
But to someone who didn't know,
right,
would just assume, she has a normal childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you know? I mean, are there any numbers that you know off the top of your head in terms of?
It is an underworld thing.
Right. So there's no way to be
statistics
sure.
are like,
yeah.
I mean, if I put some statistics out that I've heard,
Yeah.
somebody will call or correct me or whatever. So
Sure.
I'm not real fond of statistics
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
But they say about. Shared Hope's done a ton, as much as anybody on this subject. Shared Hope International has done a lot of work trying to figure it out, and they say about a football stadium's worth of kids are trafficked on any given day.
Wow. Just in the United States?
Just
or?
just U.S.
Okay.
Just U.S. Yeah, that's not international.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
not international at all.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Now, Shared Hope, have you done any work with them, or?
I did a presentation at the JUST convention, which is their juvenile sex trafficking convention,
Yeah.
in Washington, D.C. last year. So that would have been 2015 in November. And I am an ambassador, which means I've gone through their program and I could do presentations, but I've only done 2.
Okay.
I've only done 2 ambassador presentations.
Yeah.
They
yeah.
have a DVD that they sell called Chosen. And they have a gang version and a regular version of Chosen. I think they have numerous other educational materials for various sectors. So they have some just for medical community, for example.
Yeah.
They have some for first responders. They have it's all on their website. So it's Shared Hope International. PurdueAssured's.org. But
Okay.
I'm not
Well, it's
100%.
easy to Google.
Shared
I'm sure.
Hope, right? International.
Yeah. I think Gary is here. I saw his name flash upon the monitor, but he hasn't entered the room yet, so
He'll be right in.
he'll be right in. Perhaps he's waiting for a big introduction.
No, he's
Well,
yeah, he'll be right in.
Using the boys' room.
Well, unlike me, who wandered around downstairs and rang the doorbell down there for a few minutes.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
I read that sign. It took me 3 times. I read the sign 3 times where it said, you have to go upstairs. I'm like, ah!
Right. Well,
Yeah.
everyone kind of gets distracted before getting to sit here with the Honorable Gary S. Hopper, because he is a star. That's why he shows up fashionably late.
Very fashionable.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Well, Gary, we pretty much already talked about everything. Sorry.
It's all done?
I'm just kidding. No, but we have been having a very nice discussion. So where have you been? Anything important happen today?
Yes.
Was there a resolution to what was happening?
There was retribution, yeah.
Oh, well, there's always retribution.
How are you doing?
I'm okay. How are you?
You're lovely, by the way.
Thank you.
Person. Yeah, the Republicans, after their required quantity of bloodletting, decided on Jasper.
Oh, okay.
It was
Not gonna change horses, huh?
no, it got pretty brutal.
Did it?
Yeah, because Frank Saporetto, who I've known for years, was running. Carol McGuire, who we've had on the show.
Yes.
Sean Jasper and Lori Sanborn were
Yeah.
running for speaker.
Yeah.
And typically, whoever wins it can happen that way, the nomination at the Republican caucus, if the Republicans are in control, everybody votes for them on Organization Day, and so they become the next speaker.
Okay.
That's technically how it's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And so it was really close. Carol kind of upset me because she decided this afternoon that she was going to bail out and support Lori Sanborn,
Okay.
which would have been okay with me if she told me that before. But so she had Dan Itza and I forget his is his last name. I forget his first name. Get up and do a nomination. There's like nomination speeches for the different candidates, and that got through all that, and then got up and said, "I withdraw my name," which I thought was not okay.
Right.
If she was going to withdraw, everybody should have known that before they started. If she knew that ahead of time, I told her so too. I was really pissed at her.
Well, to be fair, though, the McGuires did buy us dinner once.
Oh, I forgot about that, or I wouldn't have said anything.
Right. Exactly.
No, I still like Carol. I
Yeah.
just did not like the way that was played. I thought that
Yeah.
was kind of crappy. So
So no Bill O'Brien this time around because he didn't. He didn't.
he did not run again.
Yeah.
He's out of the picture.
Wow.
So it's going to be Sean Jasper unless some shenanigans go on between now and Because the shenanigans could still happen, because all you'd need, I don't know what the number exactly is, 10 or 20 Republicans to make a deal with Steve Shurtleff, who's the Democrat nominee. All you'd need is like a dozen of them say, hey,
Right.
do we have a deal for you, huh?
Right. Yeah.
That could happen. So.
Well, that's kind of what happened last time, right? There was a deal at the last minute.
But the deal last time was that O'Brien was the nominee,
Yeah.
and Jasper got the Democrats to support him, and ended up the speaker.
Yep.
So it's still at least a Republican speaker.
Right.
We could still end up with a Democratic speaker in a Republican-controlled House.
But that's not likely to happen, right? Oh, that would be fascinating.
It'd be interesting.
Yeah,
It would be very
yeah.
interesting. I would never vote for Steve, although I like him.
Yeah.
But it would be very funny.
Yeah.
Just because that's funny. So how you been doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Hectic. It's been hectic.
Yeah.
What time do I got? I got 15 minutes. Phew. Because we got done at about just after 6.
Yeah.
So I bailed out. They're still nominating speaker, clerk of the House and stuff like that. So I bailed out before that. But I was there for it was like, I forget what the number was, 109 to 102.
Really?
So it was only a 3 or 4
Wow.
vote switch.
That's pretty
Yeah.
close.
Yeah, it's really close.
Huh.
But I could not vote for Sanborn.
Why? I don't know anything about her, really.
Well, the reason I couldn't, and I posted it on Facebook, basically on Facebook up until today, I really never said who I was supporting. I only put on there who I wouldn't support.
Okay.
And I said I couldn't, had a real problem with Lori Sanborn because her husband is in the Senate.
Oh, yes, I read that. I did read that.
Okay? And she would be the Speaker of the House. If you read the Constitution, we are supposed to be almost antagonistic towards one another. It's supposed to be two bodies that are checks against the other's power.
Yeah.
Well, you're not much of and especially when we get at the end of the every 6 months is a crunch time where they're basically amending bills and making deals with the Senate, and the House is making deals with, trying to make deals on whose bills do get through and whose don't. And it's a lot of horse trading.
Yeah.
And it's a lot like I said on Facebook, it's a lot like a poker game.
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to play poker with somebody, it's pretty easy if you already know what's in their hands.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And if Lori was Speaker, that would be the case.
Yeah.
The Senate would already know what we were going to do or what we're willing to trade, and
Right.
I think it was I had a constitutional issue with her becoming Speaker.
Makes sense.
So, which upset a lot of my conservative friends a lot.
Did it really? Yeah.
Oh yeah, because Lori's a lot more conservative than Jasper.
Okay.
So if I was going to vote just based on their conservative credentials, I would have had to go with Sanborn.
Yeah.
But Carol would have been awesome. I posted on Facebook, I'm about to vote for Carol because she's as smart as I think I am.
Oh.
So anyway, that was it.
Yeah.
So now the crap's going to hit the fan. All those people who are angry who supported Lori are going to, I'm sure, say I did something nefarious. I was accused of that earlier by Mr. Burt.
Really?
Yep.
By John Burt?
Mr. Burt posted on Facebook that the reason I was attacking Lori, which I really wasn't, I was attacking the principle of
Right.
the constitutional principle. I wasn't really attacking her personally.
Yeah, I didn't read like an attack to me. As an outsider, just reading, it looked like, oh, this is what the Constitution says, so there's an issue here, but it didn't look like an attack
No, I
to me,
didn't
to the
call-
bystander.
Yeah.
Maybe to somebody who's intimately involved, it looked like an attack, but
Yeah, I don't know what John's motives were, but he accused me of already basically selling out to Jasper
Wow. Really?
because he was going to make me chairman of Fish and Game. Which is not even close to true. I actually called Carol to told her I was going to support her Sunday.
Right.
When I talked to Jasper about a week ago, he asked me if I was going to support him. I says, I've been asking Carol to run for about a year. I can't really see changing right now.
Yeah. What if he had offered you lasagna?
If somebody had cannolis or lasagna, I would have had to flip. You know, I mean, there's only so much pressure a guy can take.
Right.
Now, does this mean, now what happens when John does his hot dog day? No hot dogs for you?
I have for Halloween, I dressed up as V for Vendetta.
Yeah.
So I'll just wear the mask and then he won't know.
He'll never know. Very
I'll
smart.
have to
Well, yeah,
get
you'll
a
have
new
to
name
take that.
tag.
Yes.
Just flip it inside out.
flip it inside
There
out.
you go.
Get a new one that says V for Vendetta.
Yes. Perfect.
That'd be convincing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, between that and the mask, yeah.
So what have you been up to?
I have been up to working a lot more with the anti-trafficking stuff
Oh, yeah,
as
that's
it
a-
correlates with pro-life stuff. So I was telling your excellent co-host that I'm not with Right to Life anymore, but I've been bringing the issue of pro-life into the things that I'm doing with the anti-trafficking people.
Is there any piece of legislation you would like me to introduce? Because I still have 2 days left. For you, I would love to do that.
Okay, let me look at what there is a little bit more. I'm not really very clued into what there is for anti-trafficking stuff here in New Hampshire as of yet. I was also telling.
And you don't have to buy me lasagna.
Oh no, okay.
That's, yeah.
That's a big. That's.
I do
No.
make a good lasagna though. I could make lasagna.
Oh, okay. Now we definitely got to deal. No, I think one of the things that's been absolutely tweaking me out over the last few months is Bill Clinton went on the Lolita Express
Right.
20-something times,
Yeah.
was it?
Is that with, are you talking about with, what's his name? That Jeffrey something guy?
Epstein,
Epstein, yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And he had underage girls on that island.
And I was telling Matt that the definition of trafficking is under 18, commercial sex under 18, or over 18 by force, fraud, or coercion.
Right.
That's what defines sex trafficking.
Yeah, and that was absolutely sex trafficking, going out to that island, and Bill Clinton was taking part in it. Whether he actually had sex with an underage kid,
Yeah, we don't know that. for
We
a
don't
fact,
know.
To be fair.
but what I do know is that, and anybody can Google this, it was a 60 Minutes show in Australia on trafficking. And it related to members of England's parliament and people basically pretty high up the food chain in England trafficking in young children. And then we had the new revelation from Canada where there was, did they say how many hundreds of kids did they say?
I think it was 246 is that one story from Canada. I think. I'm
Yeah.
not 100% sure.
It was
but
a
I'm-
lot of
Yep,
children
lot
they
of
rescued.
Yep.
And I really believe those two stories are the tip of the iceberg.
Absolutely.
And I think that if you look at and I was hoping you'd know more about this than I do, because I'm I'm not drained, I don't got complete brain damage,
No,
but it's
not entirely.
close. The WikiLeaks letters,
Yep.
there were letters in WikiLeaks where people were sending emails back and forth about pizza. It wasn't
Pizzagate. Yeah.
Pizzagate.
Pizzagate, right. They're calling it
And
Pizzagate.
the way that the items of food were used in the sentences didn't make any sense.
Right.
You know, it wasn't, hey, do you want to go out for pizza tomorrow
Yeah.
afternoon?
So the theory is it's code.
And that's what I wondered. Do you know if that's actually code? Because that's what I keep hearing on Facebook, but I don't know.
Right. I don't have any ins with people who are in the know. So I don't know any federal investigators or anybody who could really give that definitive information.
But you've heard
I have heard the same things. I've
Right.
heard the same things.
so if that's true, and it's a big if,
Right.
that means that the rich and aimless that are running our country are participating in child sex trafficking also, which could inhibit the ability to pursue it or investigate it.
Right.
But anyways, I don't know. That stuff is so disturbing.
Yeah, it's very disturbing. It is. I was reading a couple of articles about how the physicians are trying to change the definition of pedophilia to allow for it to happen, as if it's really okay. Like kids can be
Consent.
They can consent.
Well, who's trying to do this?
It was in the New York Times, actually.
Yeah, a couple. There's been a bunch of articles actually. I probably could go get my notes, but I don't know if we have time. But
No, we don't.
The book that delineates what's a disorder and what's a mental illness is a DTSM or something.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Right,
yes,
right.
Yeah.
So the people who are designing that book are trying to say that pedophilia is not. It shouldn't be a crime. It shouldn't even be a disorder. That it's natural for men to be turned on by little children. And the thing is that in all of the various groups that I'm connected with, from people who are adult children of sex abuse or adult children of adult survivors of abuse, or various groups that I've been connected with, they're all the same thing. These people have illnesses and injury from this abuse that they suffered so long ago. And there was an article that was very interesting that I thought about bringing in, and I didn't, but it's called the ACE. It's the Adverse Childhood Experiences Score. And so you take these 14 questions and you answer them, and if you answer positively or negatively, it gives you a bottom line score. And a lot of people who score high on the ACE have chronic illnesses like chronic fatigue syndrome.
Yeah.
They have
Alcoholism,
lupus.
drug addiction.
Oh, those are off the charts. The higher you get, a score of 5 or above, you get all these autoimmune diseases, you get the alcoholism, the addiction, the self-harm, you get the suicidal tendencies. When you get up over 9, it's right off the charts. It's so high, it's not even funny. I scored 14 on the 14.
Wow, no kidding.
Hey, nice, huh?
Go me.
You aced it.
I aced it, right? But I also had a fair score on the resiliency. So you take both these tests.
Yeah.
So you take it's just a questionnaire. I say test, but it's a
Yeah,
questionnaire.
yeah.
So there's a resiliency also. So the resiliency factors are: did you ever feel safe? Did you ever have anybody that you could confide in? Did you trust someone? Different things like that. So the adverse childhood experiences are: did you feel safe? Did you ever see physical abuse? Did you ever receive physical abuse? Did you ever sexual abuse, et cetera, et cetera? So those kinds of things, in my mind, should be accounted for in whether or not men should be sexually interested and or pursuing children. And they seem to, I don't know if it's about money or what it's about, but the idea that this is not harmful to children is
You know what it's about?
absolutely boggling.
It is about, as we become more and more a godless society, people will use whatever rationale they can to justify their baser instincts. And that's all it's about. Because there is no way that anybody's dealt with any of these children that have been sexually abused that could possibly, even remotely reasonably, believe that somehow it's okay. And I've heard the arguments, and it's all just rationalization for what is, in fact, a profoundly evil sin.
It defies logic for sure.
I don't think it defies logic. If you are an alcoholic, can convince themselves that drinking's okay, and drinking and driving's okay. Logically, they've calculated that all out. They're wrong.
Okay.
It's an
I see
evil
what you're saying.
decision.
Yeah.
But they can rationalize it.
But they can rationalize
Yeah.
it. So it's not irrational, it's just immoral. It's fundamentally a sin. We have to wrap it up. I'm sorry I'm so late.
I asked her a
I'm
lot of
sorry
good
I
questions,
missed you.
didn't I?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. It was
Can you come back again sometime when
Yes.
when I'm not stupid?
I'd be very happy to, and you're not stupid ever.
Oh, well, that's not
Wow.
what my wife says.
Yeah, I know, right? She was
Hey,
here earlier.
we'll see you guys next week.
Bye, everybody.